Hello and welcome back to CSC's live chat. I'm Sukanya Nair, and thank you so much for joining us for the grand finale episode of this year. Today, on this for the final episode, we are going to dive right into CSC down to its recent cover story, which is on chemical pollution, which also happens to be one of the most underreported and underrated risks of 21st century. So for that, we have with us today Rohini Krishnamurthy. She's a reporter with Down to Earth and also happens to be one of the authors of this cover story. Rohini, thank you so much for joining us for
Thank you
the
for
for the
having me.
final episode. So Rohini, to set the context, we know that chemicals at this point are omnipresent.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit about the scale of the problem of chemical pollution and what are the chemicals that are of key concern?
Right. So according to a 2020 study, so that made an attempt to sort of provide a list of chemicals. So uh, based on their analysis of inventories from 19 countries, they say that there are about 350,000 chemicals that have been registered for production and use. And of them, like 50,000, we don't know what the 50,000 chemicals can do. And then we have another around 70,000 chemicals, and it's very vague. We don't, it's very, the description of these chemicals, they're very ambiguous.
Right.
So now, if you look at plastics, also, there are around 16,000 chemicals that go into the manufacturing of plastics. Of them, we know around 4,000 are hazardous, but that doesn't mean that the rest aren't. We don't know.
Right.
So this is what we are
We know
currently
right
looking
now.
at.
Okay.
And another, like certain chemicals that have, or classes of chemicals that have received a lot of attention in the recent past, include POPs, which are persistent organic pollutants. So these are actually, like as the name suggests, they're persistent. They last for years. They're very difficult to degrade. They also tend to bioaccumulate in the body, in the sense that it stays. The accumulation actually is faster than your body's ability to get rid of it.
Okay.
So it accumulates, and then you have problems. Then there's also problems with biomagnification, which is how the chemicals sort of get concentrated as it passes along the food chain from small animals to predators.
Okay.
So those are the issues. Then they're toxic, and apart from that, you also have PFAS, which has received a lot of attention in the recent past, and it is also, it's called forever chemicals. It's found in your cookware,
Okay.
and all of that. And so there are 14,000 chemicals under this category. And again, they're hard to disrupt, and they're also been linked to cancers, and they're called endocrine disruptors because they interfere with your organs that produce hormones. So it interferes with the hormonal thing. And then apart from that, you have microplastics.
Of course. Right.
And they are also found in every part of the body. And so the thing is that microplastics are also linked to a lot of diseases, like endocrine, diseases linked with your hormonal fluctuations, uh, cancer, and all of that. And then you have heavy metals, like lead and magnesium, which we've heard a lot
Right.
about. And they also tend to bioaccumulate, and they are all very toxic at low concentration. So these are something that we are some of the major classes of chemicals that have emerged as concern in the recent few years. So yeah, that's about it.
So the thing is, I mean, how far do we understand the health impact of this problem? And we know for a fact that human body is more exposed to more chemicals like than ever before. So
Mhm.
what does really happen once the chemical enters our body?
Right. So the first thing, there are studies that have looked at what happens once it enters your body. So first thing is, it actually affects your, causes mutations, which again
Right.
is linked to diseases. It can also cause epigenetic changes, which is basically doesn't make any changes to the DNA, but it can switch on and off DNA expression,
Okay.
which means that the instructions present in your DNA, it might either allow a protein to be produced from the instructions, or it
Right.
might block it. So
Okay.
what happens is, if it blocks a certain protein that's required for development of a child, then that's a problem.
Right.
So then there's that. You also have, it can also affect your mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of your cell. It's responsible for
Mhm.
generating energy and metabolism and all of that. It can also enter your head, affect your brain, affect cognition, and it can affect your gut, and gut is also linked to a lot of health issues, and also endocrine, which I've talked about before. And then also it can also block communication between cells, and when something like that happens, it can also lead to cancer.
Right.
So these are the main ways through which it could potentially contribute to diseases.
Okay, so if we, for example, if we take the case of India,
Mm.
a case study like the Bhopal gas
Hmm.
tragedy,
Hmm.
we are all aware of it, and we have also, there are studies that says that even today the traces of the impact can be traced back even till today, right?
Mhm.
So how do we conceptualize a problem like that, that is still over the generation also it's passing on?
Yeah, so I mean, this is something that the Bhopal gas tragedy, calls for not, I mean, understanding, chemicals in the sense like not just the short term but also the long term impacts.
Right.
And what really happens is like during like while working on the cover story, while talking to researchers, they say that there's science always plays catch up. So you have these chemicals that are released without its impacts being studied extensively. Then you have trade secrets and all of that. So it's become very difficult for scientists to study them or understand. So very recently in 2023, there was this study that looked at impacts many years later. So what they found is that like the Bhopal gas tragedy happened in 1984. 1985, they saw a reduction in male births, and that's because women fetuses are more physiologically stronger.
Right.
So this is one of the reasons given, and also women also suffered. There were a lot of miscarriages. This is like in
Right.
the immediate aftermath. Then there were also premature menopause and all of that, but
Right.
they also saw, like many years later, they saw an increase in cancer risk in men. Like for example, men, boys born in 1985, they had a eightfold increase in cancer risk, but then the same children by 2015, their cancer risk had increased 27-fold. So yeah, so there was this cancer risk. And also if you look at the social implications, they also saw that people born in 1985, it basically robbed their ability to earn a living. So
Okay.
so these are the impacts that we have to consider when we are looking at the regulations, or the fact, or how we look at chemicals, the short as well as the long term impacts, or periodic assessment of the chemicals that are being used
I think
by the
we
industries.
also have a similar example of the endosulfide also, right? And I think castle goats example is also there.
Right. So I mean, there's that, and there's also one thing I also forgot to mention was uh, we have these regrettable substitutions,
Right.
they call it.
Yeah.
So I give you an example. There was something called as bisphenol A, which was used, and it's used in plastic manufacturing, and later it was substituted with another chemical called bisphenol S, and many years later they found bisphenol S also has the same
Similar
sort of
impact. Yeah.
endocrine impacts.
Right.
So this is something like, I mean, we've seen lots of examples like that, where a chemical, like there's some study saying that this chemical has these impacts, and then you replace it very quickly, sort of tweak or engineer that molecule and release something else,
Right.
and then it turns out to be same or even
Similar
worse.
problem.
Yeah,
Right.
so this is something that that has sort of come
Right.
up in
We're
this.
sort of on a
Yeah.
very grim note. We are ending this year, but what do you think is the way forward?
Uh, One is like we need better regulations. Of course, this is going to be something that a lot of governments have to think about, because there's a trade-off between job employment, because these industries also generate employment, and but then that shouldn't be done at the cost of
Obviously.
people's health and
Right.
all of that. So we need better, stronger regulations. We need more funding to study these chemicals
Mm.
before they're being released into the environment, or in fact not. And once we have understood that this particular chemical is hazardous, we have to take every step to ensure that it's not released into the environment.
Yeah.
um Another thing I can think of is, apart from regulation, more funding, more research. We also need more sort of collaborations between different countries. We also need better treaties to sort of regulate the trade, because trade is also something that has I mean, it's very opaque. Not much is known. Now, if you look at pesticides itself, you have the basic pesticide, you have formulations, all of that. So all of this is traded, and not much is known. There's not much in scrutiny over these
And
things.
transparency as well.
Exactly. So these are something we need better transparency. And industries, I mean, lots of industries self-report. So there needs to be better check
Right, checks and
into,
balances
yeah,
for it.
exactly, into all of this.
All right. Thank you so much, Rohini, for. I mean, like I said earlier, it is a very grim topic to end the
Mm,
year, but
mm, mm.
the live chat has been an incredible journey so far. We have had over 25 episodes, and next year we'll come up with brighter topics probably. But yeah, stay tuned. We'll keep watching the live chat. Thank you once again for joining.
Thank you.
Bye bye, and wishing you all a very happy new year. Bye bye.